Hello, my dear friends. It's March 5th, 2025, and I'm here with you on the Military Reporter channel. Let's start parsing the map, and I have great news from the Kursk region, and it comes from a Ukrainian source. Pay attention to how the situation looked as recently as yesterday. According to this Ukrainian source, the AFU controlled 393 square kilometers of territory. However, today this figure has decreased. The bridgehead has shrunk by 40 square kilometers, which is about 12% in one day. Of course, I am not claiming that Russian troops have liberated 12% of the Kursk region in a day. I am talking specifically about the reduction of the Ukrainian armed forces bridgehead in the Kursk region. It is important to note that in the last 5 days the advance of Russian troops has become so significant that even Ukrainian sources cannot ignore it. That is why the borders of the Ukrainian armed forces bridgehead are getting smaller every day. Now let's talk about specific events. First of all, we are talking about the village of Pogorby, which came under the control of the Russian armed forces back on February 26th. Then Russian troops liberated Orlovka and, according to some reports, Novaya Sorakino. According to other information, there is still fighting there, but everything indicates that the village is already under the control of the Russian forces. In addition, Russian troops have been reported advancing southward to Staraya Sorokina, where clashes are also taking place. As for the Kursk direction, Russian troops are actively advancing from Lebedevka towards, for example, Cossack-Lochniai. Of course, it is still 7 to 8 kilometers to Cossack-Lochniai, but what's important is that Ukrainian publics are reporting incessant assaults. They claim that the Ukrainian armed forces have so far managed to hold back the powerful onslaught of the Russian armed forces, but recognize that the situation is becoming critical. Now let's turn to Sumy region. There is no confirmed data on the presence of Russian troops on the maps, but it is known for sure that the settlements of Novinkoy and Zuravka are already under the control of the Russian armed forces. The front line now runs as follows. Russian troops are not so much trying to liberate Sumy region, but are advancing to a key road, which is of strategic importance. I talk about this on a daily basis, but it is worth emphasizing that the losses of the Ukrainian armed forces on this section of the road are colossal. Their supply of ammunition, fuel, water, food and clothing is extremely difficult. At the same time, it is also necessary to evacuate the wounded and damaged equipment, which turns movement along this road into a suicide mission. However, the Ukrainian group, which numbers 20,000 to 30,000 fighters, does not yet have an order to retreat. It is still unclear whether the Ukrainian armed forces will be able to play this situation as a trump card, since peace talks are unlikely in the near future. However, the question remains open. If the Ukrainian troops are forced to retreat, where exactly? Do they have positions prepared in advance? Experience shows that most often there are either no such positions or they are extremely poorly equipped. Ukrainian soldiers retreating from Ugledar said that they had to dig in with trowels themselves. However, even after that they were unable to hold on to their new positions. Thus, it can be assumed that after the Kursk bridgehead is collapsed, the Russian army may undertake a powerful offensive on Sumy. This is only a probable development of events, but there is a feeling that Russian troops and commanders are closely involved in the Kursk bridgehead. There is a relative lull on other parts of the front, and many experts, including myself, believe that this may be due to a reluctance to provoke Donald Trump into reconsidering his position on Ukraine. Perhaps this is why active actions are concentrated in the Kursk region. So in the near term, at least today, I don't expect any serious offensives or strikes. There may be some Orshnik-style attacks, such as the recent fly-in on a training camp in the Dnipropetrovsk region. But this is not considered a major operation, as it is a strike on a military target. Despite the serious losses for the Ukrainian armed forces, this incident will not spoil relations with America in any way. Let's move on to the Kupiansk direction. Here the offensive actions of the Russian troops in the Zagryzovo area continue. This village is now about half controlled by Russian forces. The line of fighting is as follows. Russian troops are exerting pressure and, apparently, two settlements, Boguslavka and Novaya Kruglyakhovka, may soon come under the control of the Russian armed forces. There are few data from this direction. Ukrainian troops a few days ago tried to engage in active fighting in the city itself, attacking towards the center. They tried to encircle Russian forces, cut off supply routes, and block traffic. However, these attempts were demonstrative rather than strategically significant. What do Ukrainian sources say? They have effectively covered the situation with a fog of war, claiming only some successes. However, there is no concrete information about the Ukrainian armed forces' advance. Russian military bloggers have also not published any information on Torotsk for 2 days now. There is only one important piece of news here. Fierce fighting is going on in the area of Peskanoy. Russian troops have liberated about 50% of the settlement, but the front line remains tense. As for the situation near Pokrovskoy, a new commander, General Drotov, has been appointed. He was expected to take active action, and indeed he sent troops on the offensive, suffered certain losses, advanced a little, but then was forced to retreat. Nevertheless, he managed to halt the advance of the Russian forces. If we talk about the direction to Dnipropetrovsk, there are no special changes here. Konstantinovka remains under tight control of the Ukrainian armed forces. The only noticeable change on the map recently is in the Velikano-Vosyolovsk direction. Russian troops are developing their offensive northwest of Veliky Novosayolka, moving towards Berlitskoy and Privolnoy. Further movement goes in the direction of Shevchenko and Volnoy Poly. Now there is an important question that goes beyond operational reports. Will there be peace? Will the world leaders be able to reach an agreement? Putin and Trump may come to an agreement, but it is unlikely that they will be able to reach an agreement with Zelensky. There is no doubt about that. The temporary lull in active hostilities can be explained by the expectation of political decisions. However, if Trump really stops military aid to Ukraine, Polish media are already reporting its suspension, and arms deliveries through Poland are finally curtailed, the Ukrainian army will find itself in an extremely difficult situation. Without weapons, intelligence, and communications, the Ukrainian armed forces will be forced to retreat. However, do not expect an instant collapse of the front or the capture of Zaporizhia in 3 days. The Russian offensive will develop gradually, but it is likely to become much more intense. Until Trump and Putin meet, until the final agreements are finalized, and until Trump is convinced of Ukraine's non-agreement, it is unlikely to expect a dramatic change in the situation. Therefore, there will likely be no significant breakthroughs by Russian forces in the coming days. This morning, March 5th, there were new reports from the front. Russian troops continue to increase the pace of the offensive in several directions, using the tactic of gradual compression of the encircled AFU groups. The Ukrainian forces' bridgehead in the Kursk region continues to shrink. As of this morning, the Russian armed forces have gained a foothold in the area of Novaya Sorokyna and are also fighting for Staraya Sorokyna. Reserves are being pulled to this area to further develop the success. Ukrainian sources report a difficult situation, confirming serious pressure from Russian units. After significant losses of the Ukrainian armed forces on the road connecting Kursk and Sumy regions, the enemy command faces a difficult choice: either try to hold this corridor under constant attacks, or organize a retreat and take new defensive lines closer to Sumy. However, the lack of pre-prepared positions could lead to an uncontrolled retreat and the loss of several more settlements. In the Zagryzovo area, Russian units have completely cleared the settlement and advanced further. There are reports that Boguslavka and Novaya Kruglyakhovka have come under the control of Russian forces, which poses a threat to further Ukrainian armed forces' positions in this sector. Despite Ukrainian sources' claims of a fog of war, satellite images and field data confirm that Russian forces continue to advance towards the city center. Ukrainian formations have suffered significant losses, especially around the factory areas. However, the Ukrainian armed forces still hold the western outskirts of Chasiv Yar. Against the background of the deteriorating situation for the Ukrainian forces, Western media are beginning to discuss the possibility of changing the policy of support for Kyiv. In the United States, the split on the issue of further military aid is growing. Republicans supporting Donald Trump openly advocate its curtailment. On the night of March 4th to 5th, Donald Trump delivered an address to Congress, where he made it clear that the priority of his administration will be to restore the United States economy, rather than continuing to finance military action abroad. This speech caused alarm in Kyiv and Brussels, as it will be extremely difficult for the Ukrainian army to hold the current front line without American aid. The situation on the front line remains dynamic. Russian troops continue their offensive, while Ukrainian forces are losing key positions. Western political support for Ukraine is waning, which could lead to significant changes in the coming weeks.